Hello and welcome back to the Gentleman Psychic. I cannot believe I just did this. I accidentally clicked out of my video. I had it all set up and I hit done instead of go live. So now I have to go over here. Okay. Anyway, I hate when I do that, but I did that. Let's see. Okay, here we go. I'm live now. Share that one. Copy link. I'm so sorry. Hello, everybody. Hi, Christy. You are first. Um, I was supposed to. Anyway, one moment. Let me do all of this. Um. Okay. Hi, Michael Stewart. Hello. Um. Where else can I go? I accidentally. Oh, thank you very much, Mary Jo. That's very nice. Um. I feel so badly because I had it set to go live and then I hit done and not go live and they're side by side and now I think I futzed it up. So I have to go send this to all of the other places. Just a second. Okay, let me see here. We'll go over here to my other one because I messed it up. I can't believe I did that. I cannot believe I did that. And then we'll go over here. Hello again, everybody. Okay, so I don't know why subconsciously I had it all set up. I had plenty of time, and I had 3 people waiting, and it was everything was looking good. And then instead of clicking go live, accidentally hit done because I guess that's how my brain is working today. I guess it's not going to be too big of a deal. Whoever was there will come back, hopefully. Um, Anyway, if not, they can click out and come right back in. So, happy January the 20th. It is almost a month already. We are into the new year, and I am here with you, and you are here with me, and that is what makes things better. So, to begin with, I'm your host, Richard Lale, Richard Lale Lillard. Richard Lale is one name. Richard Lale is not two names. If I were just Richard, I would be a dick. So, yes, Richard Lale is my name. Those of you who comment and call me Richard, Richard is not my name, though I do love having you here. What else can I say to you? I am looking forward to this story. I haven't read it before. I don't really have a lot in the way of announcements, so I guess this is time for you, ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, to go get a drink, pick your poison. Mine is strychnine. In fact, I should probably start with a little of that right now. Mmm, so delicious and healthy too. Now, without further ado, yes, Monferno, I will do videos with the boys this year. I know that I've been away from my actual channel. I've been going through a lot in the last year, but hopefully things are on the mend. So hello, Lunalicious. Hello. Oh, I should send this just a few more places so that they know because I made the mistake. Let me see here. Send it here, and we'll send it here. And we'll send it, let's see. Why not? We'll send it here too. Okay, these things do happen. Good evening, Lunalicious, Michael Stewart, we all have. All right, good. Now, the devil in the nunnery. Buckingham is as pleasant a shire as a man shall see on a 7 days' journey. Neither was it any less pleasant the days of our Lord King Edward, the third of that name, he who fought and put the French to shameful discomfort at Cessy, at Poitiers, and at many another hard-fought field. May God rest his soul, for he now sleeps in the great church at Westminster. Buckinghamshire is full of smooth, round hills and woodlands, of hawthorn and beech, and it is a famous country for its brooks and shaded waterways running through the low hay meadows. Upon its hills feed 1,000 sheep, scattered like the remnants of the spring snow, and it was from these that the merchants made themselves fat purses, sending the wool into the Flanders in exchange for silver crowns. There were many strong castles there too, and rich abbeys, and the king's highways ran through it from the north to south, upon which the pilgrims went in crowds to worship at the shrine of the blessed Saint Alban. Thereon also rode noble knights and stout men-at-arms, and these you could follow with the eye by their glistening armor as they wound over hill and dale, mile after mile, with shining spears and shields and fluttering pennons, and anon a trumpet or two sounding the same keen note as that which rang out dreadfully on those bloody fields of France. The girls used to come to the cottage doors or run to hide themselves in the wayside woods to see them go trampling by, for Buckinghamshire girls love a soldier above all men. Nor, I warrant, you were jolly friars lacking in the highways and the byways and under the hedges, good men of religion, comfortable of penance, and easy of life, who could tip a wink to a housewife and drink and crack paunches, skins full of ale, and a merry salutation for everyone. A fat, pleasant land with this Buckinghamshire. Always plenty to eat and drink therein, and pretty girls and lusty fellows, and God knows what more a man can expect in the world where all is vanity, as the preacher truly says. There was a nunnery at Maid's Morton, 2 miles out at Buckingham Borough, on the road of Stony Stratford, and the place was called Maid's Morton because of the nunnery. Very devout creatures were the nuns, being holy ladies, out of families of gentle blood. They punctually fulfilled to the letter all the commands of their pious founder, just as they were blazoned on the great parchment regula, which the Lady Mother kept on her reading desk in her little cell. If ever any of the nuns, by any chance or subtle machination of evil one, was guilty of the smallest backsliding from the conduct that beseemed them, they made full and devout confession thereof to the Holy Father who visited them for this purpose. The good man loved swan's meat and galingale, and the charitable nuns never failed to provide of their best for him on his visiting days, and whatsoever penance he laid upon them, they performed with utmost and with due contrition of the heart. From matins to complain, they regularly and decently carried out the services of Holy Mother Church. After dinner, one read aloud to them from the Rule, and again, after supper, there was reading from the life of some notable saint or virgin, that thereby they might find and sample for themselves on their own earthly pilgrimage. For the rest, they tended to their herb garden, read their reared their chickens, which were famous for miles around, and kept strict watch over their haywards and swineherds. If time was when they had nothing more important on hand, they set to it and made the prettiest blood bandages imaginable for the bishop. The bishop's chaplain, the archdeacon, the neighboring abbot, and other godly men of religion round about, who were forced often to bleed themselves for their health's sake and their eternal salvation. To these venerable men, in the process of time, came to have by them great chests full of these useful articles. If little tongues wagged now and then, as the sisters sat at their swing in the great hall, who shall blame them? Not I. Besides, some of them were something stricken in years, and old women are garrulous, and hard to be constrained from chattering and gossiping. But, being devout women, they could have spoken no evil. One evening, after vespers, all these good nuns sat at supper, the abbess on her high dais, and the nuns ranged up and down the hall, the long trestle tables. The abbess had just said gratias, and the sisters had sung Cuvivit et regretet per omnia secula seclorum. Amen. When in came the manciple mysteriously, and with many depreciating bows and outstretchings of the hands, sidled himself upon the dais, and, permission having been given him, spoke to the lady mother thus: Madam, there is a certain pilgrim at the gate who asks refreshment and a night's lodging. It is true he spoke softly, but little pink ears are sharp of hearing, and nuns, from their secluded way of life, love to hear the news of the great world. Send him away, said the abbess. It is not fit that a man should lie within this house. Madam, he asks for food and a bed of straw, lest he should starve of hunger and exhaustion on his way to do penance and worship at the holy shrine of the blessed Saint Alban. What kind of pilgrim is he? Madam, to speak truly, I know not, but he appears of a reverend and gracious aspect, a young man, well spoken and well disposed. Madam knows it waxeth late, and the ways are dark and foul. I would not have a young man who is given to pilgrimages and good works to faint and starve by the wayside. Let him sleep with the Haywards. But, madam, he's a young man of goodly appearance and conversation. Saving your reverence, I would not wish to ask him to eat and sleep with churls. He must sleep without. Let him, however, enter and eat of our poor table. Madam, I will strictly enjoin him what you command. He hath with him, however, an instrument of music, and would fain cheer you with spiritual songs. A little shiver of anticipation ran down the benches of the great hall, and the nuns fell to whispering. Take care, Sir Manciple, that he should not be not that he be not some light juggler, a singer of vain songs, a mocker. I would not have these quiet halls disturbed by wanton music and unholy words, God forbid. And she crossed herself. Madam, I will answer for it. The manciple bowed himself from the dais and went down the middle of the hall, his keys rattling in his belt. A little buzz of conversation rose from the sisters and went up to the oak roof trees. Like the singing of bees, the abbess told her beads. The hall door opened, and in came the pilgrim. God knows what manner of man he was. I cannot tell you. He certainly was lean and lithe like a cat. His eyes danced in his head like the very devil. but his cheeks and jaws were as bare of flesh as any hermit's that lives on roots and ditch water. His yellow-hosed legs went like the tune of May game, and he screwed and twisted his scarlet, jerkined body in time with them. In his left hand he held a citron, on which he twanged with his right, making a cunning noise that titillated the backbones of those who heard it, and teased every delicate nerve in the body. Such a tune would have tickled the ribs of Death himself. A queer fellow to go pilgrimaging, certainly, but why? When they saw him, all the young nuns tittered and the old nuns grinned until they showed their red gums. It is hard to tell. Even the lady mother on the dais smiled, though she tried to frown a moment later. The pilgrim stepped slightly up to the dais, the infernal devil in his legs, making the nuns think of the games the village folk play all night in the churchyard on St. John's Eve. "Gracious mother," he cried, bowing deeply and in comely wise, "allow a poor pilgrim on his way to confess and do penance at the shrine of St. Alban to take food in your hall and to rest with the Haywards this night, and let me thereof make some small recompense with a few sacred numbers, such as your pious founder would not have disdained to hear." "A young man," returned the abbess, "right glad am I to hear that God has moved thy heart to godly works, and to go on pilgrimages, and verily I wish it may be to thy soul's health, and to the respite of thy pains hereafter. I am right willing that thou shouldst refresh thyself with meat and the rest at this holy place. Madam, I thank thee from my heart, but as some slight token of gratitude for so large a favour, let me, I pray thee, sing one or two of my divine songs to the uplifting of these holy sisters' hearts." Another burst of chatter, louder than before, louder from the benches in the hall. On the One or two of the younger sisters clapped their plump white hands and cried, "Oh, the lady abbess!" held up her hand and in silence. "Verily, I should be glad to hear some sweet songs of religion, and I think it would be the uplifting of these sisters' hearts. But, young man, take warning against singing any wanton lines of vain imagination, such as the ribbalds use on the highways, and the idlers and the haunters of taverns. I have heard them in my youth, although my ears tingle to think of them now, and I should think it a shame that any such light words should echo among these sacred rafters, or disturb the slumber of our pious founder, who now sleeps in Christ. Let me remind you of what Saint Germain, "Onger solitarius in desiderio anime sua attraxit ventum amoris." The wild ass of the wilderness, in the desire of his heart, snuffeth up the wind of love. Whereby that holy man signifies that vain earthly love, which is put but wind and air, and shall avail nothing at all. When this weak impulse, impure flesher, is sloughed away. Madam, such songs as I shall sing, I learned at the mouth of our holy parish priest, Sir Thomas, a man of all good learning and purity of heart. In that case, said the abbess, sing in God's name, but stand at the end of the hall, for it suits not the dignity of my office a man should stand so near this dais. Whereupon the pilgrim, making obeisance, went to the end of the hall, and the eyes of all the nuns danced after his dancing legs, and their ears hung on the clear, sweet notes he struck out of his citron. As he walked, he took his place with his back against the great hall door, in such attitude as men use when they play the cittern. A little trembling ran through the nuns, and some rose from their seats and knelt on the benches, leaning over the table, the better to see him and to hear him. Their eyes sparkled like dew on meadow sweet on a fair morning. Certainly his fingers were bewitched, or else by the devil was in this cittern, for such sweet sounds had never been heard in the hall since the day when it was built and consecrated to the service of the servants of God. The shrill notes fell like tinkling rain from the high roof in mad, fantastic trills and dying falls that brought all one's soul to one's lips to suck them in. What he sang about, God only knows. Not one of the nuns, or even the holy abbess herself, could have told you, although you had offered her a piece of the true cross or a hair of the Blessed Virgin for a single word, but a divine yearning filled all their hearts. They seemed to hear 10,000 angels singing in chorus, Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. They floated up on the impalpable clouds of azure and silver, up through the blissful paradises of the uppermost heaven. Their nostrils were filled with the odors of exquisite spices and herbs and smoke of incense. Their eyes dazzled at splendors and lights and glories. Their ears were full of gorgeous harmonies and all created concords of sweet sounds. The very fibers of being were loosened within them, as though their souls would leap from their bodies in exquisite desolation. The eyes of the younger nuns grew round and large and tender. Their breath almost died upon their velvet lips. As for the old nuns, the great salt tears coursed down their withered cheeks and fell like rain on their gnarled hands. The abbess sat on her dais, with her lips apart, looking into space 10,000 miles away. But no one saw her, and she saw no one. Everyone had forgotten everyone else in that delicious intoxication. Then, with a shrill cry, full of human yearnings and desire, the minstrel came to a sudden stop. Western wind, when wilt thou blow? And the small rain will down rain. Christ, if my love were in my arms, and I in my bed again. Silence. Not one of the holy sisters spoke, but some sighed, some put their hands over their hearts, and one put her hand in her hood, but when she felt her hair shorn close to her scalp, drew it out again sharply, as though she had touched a red-hot iron, and cried, "Oh, Jesu!" Sister Purnell, a toothless old woman, began to speak in a cracked, high voice, quickly and monotonously, as though she spoke in a dream. Her eyes were wet and red, and her thin lips trembled. God knows, she said, I loved him. God knows it, but I bid all those who be maids here to be mindful of the woods, for they are green, but they are deep and dark, and it is merry in the springtime, with the thick turf below and the good boughs above. All alone with your hearts, darling, all alone in the green wood. But God help me, he would not stay any more than snow at Easter. I thought just now that I was back with him in the woods. God keep all those that be maids from the green woods. The pretty Sister Ursula, who had only just finished her novative, was as white as a sheet. Her breath came quickly and thickly, as though she bore a great burden uphill. A great sigh made her comely shoulders rise and fall. Blessed Virgin, she cried, oh, ye ask so much. I did not know. God help me, I did not know. and her grey eyes filled with sudden tears, and she dropped her head on her arms on the table and sobbed aloud. Then cried out Sister Catherine, who looked as old and dead as a twig dropped from a tree of last autumn, and at whom the younger sisters privily mocked. It is the wars, the cursed wars. I have held his head in this lap, I tell you. I have kissed his soul into mine. But now he lies dead, and his pretty limbs all dropped away into the earth. Holy Mother, have pity on me. I shall never kiss his sweet lips again, or look into his jolly eyes. My heart is broken long since. Holy Mother, Holy Mother. He must come oftener, said a plump sister of 30, with a little turned-up nose at the end, eyes black as sloes, and lips round as plum. I go to the orchard day after day and gather my lap full of apples. He is my darling. Why does he not come? I look for him every time I gather the ripe apples. He used to come, but that was in spring, and Our Lady knows that is long ago. Will it not be spring again soon? I have gathered many ripe apples. Sister Margarita rocked herself to and fro in her seat and crossed her arms on her breast. She was singing quietly to herself. Lula lule, thou tiny little child, lula lule. Suck at my breast, that I am thereat beguiled, lula lule. She moaned to herself. I have seen the village women go to the well, carrying their babies with them, and they laugh as they go by on the way. Their babies hold them tight round the neck, and their mothers comfort them, saying, Hey, hey, my little son, hey, hey, my sweetening. Christ and the blessed saints know that I have never felt a baby's little hand on my bosom, and now I shall die without it, for I am old and past the age of bearing children. Lula lule, thou tiny little boy, lula lule. To feel thee suck doth soothe my great annoy. Lula lule lule. I have heard them on May morning with their pipes and their tabors and jolly, jolly music, cried Sister Helen. I have seen them too, and my heart has gone with them to bring back the white hawthorn from the woods, a man and a maid to hawthorn bow, as it says in the song. They sing outside my window all St. John's Eve, so that I cannot say my prayers for the wild thoughts they put into my brain as they go dancing up and down in the churchyard. I cannot forget the pretty words they say to each other. Sweet love, a kiss, kiss me, my love, nor let me go, as I went through the garden gate. A bonny black night, and what will you give me? A merry mother, have pity on a poor girl's heart. I shall die, if no one love me, I shall die. In faith, I am truly sorry, William, said Sister Agnes, who was gaunt and hollow-eyed with long vigils of over-fasting, for which the good father had rebuked her time after time, saying that she overtasked the poor weak flesh. I am truly sorry that I could not wait, but the neighbors made such a clamor, and my father and mother buffeted me too sorely. It is under the oak tree, no more than a foot deep, and covered with red and brown leaves. It was pretty sight to see the red blood on its neck, as white as whalebone, and it neither cried nor wept. So I put it down among the leaves, the pretty poppet, and it was like thee, William, it was like thee. I am sorry, I did not wait, and now I am worn and wan for thy sake. This many a long year, and all in vain. For thou never comest. I am an old woman now, and I shall soon be quiet and not complain any more. Some of the sisters were sobbing, as if their hearts would break. Some sat quiet and still, and let their tears fall from their eyes unchecked. Some smiled and cried together. Some sighed a little and trembled like aspen leaves in a southern wind. The great candles in the hall were burning down to their sockets. One by one they spluttered out. A ghostly flickering fell upon the legend over the broad dais. Colnibian mundum sed virginatus paradisium comple, which means marriage replenisheth the world, but virginity paradise. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly the great bell of the nunnery began to toll. With a cry, the abbess sprang to her feet. There were tear stains on her white cheeks, and her hand shook as she pointed fiercely to the door. "Away, false pilgrim!" she cried. "Silence, foul blasphemer! Retro me, Satanas!" She crossed herself again and again, saying, "Pater noster!" The nuns screamed and trembled in terror. A little cloud of blue smoke arose from where the minstrel had stood. There was a little tongue of flame, and he had disappeared. It was almost dark in the hall. A few sobs broke the silence. The dying light of a single candle fell on the form of the Lady Mother. "Tomorrow," she said, "we shall fast and sing placebo and dirge, and the seven potential penitent psalms. May the holy God have mercy upon us for all we have done and said and thought amiss this night. Amen." Let us continue. The Litanies of Satan by Charles Pierre Baudelaire. O thou of all angels, loveliest and most learned, to whom no praise is chanted and no incense burned. Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. O Prince of exile, God betrayed by foulest wrong, thou that in vain art vanquished, rising up more strong. Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. O thou who knowest all, each weak and shameful thing, kind minister to man in anguish, mighty King, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou that dost teach the leper, the pariah we despise, to love like other men and taste sweet paradise. Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. O thou that in the womb of death thy fecund mate engurnedest hope with her sweet eyes and her mad gait, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou who upon the scaffold dost give that calm and proud demeanor to the felon which condemns the crowd, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou that is seen in darkness and canst bring to light the gems a jealous God is hidden from our sight, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou to whom all the secret arsenals are known, where iron, where gold and silver slumber locked in stone, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou whose broad hand dost hide the precipice from him who, barefoot in his sleep, walks on the building's rim, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. O thou who makest supple between the horse's feet the old bones of the drunkard fallen in the street, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou who hast taught the frail and overburdened mind how easily saltpeter and sulphur are combined, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Thou that hast burned thy brand beyond all help secure into the rich man's brow who tramples on the poor. Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. O thou who makest gentle the eyes and hearts of whores, with kindness for the wretched, homage for the rags and sores, Satan, take pity upon me in my deep distress. Staff of the exile, lamp of the inventor, last priest of the man about whose neck the rope is passed, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. O thou adopted father of those fatherless, whom God from Eden thrust in terror and nakedness, Satan, have pity upon me in my deep distress. Glory and praise to thee, Satan, in the Most High, where thou didst reign, and in deep hell's obscurity, where manacled thou broodest long. O silent power, grant that my soul be near to thee in thy great hour, when, like a living temple, victorious bow on bow, shall rise thee, tree of knowledge, whose roots are in thy brow. I rather like that one. The Devil and the Broker. A medieval legend. Bret Harte. The church clocks in San Francisco were striking 10. The devil, who had been flying over that city that evening, just then alighted on the roof of a church near the corner of a Bush and Montgomery Streets. It will be perceived that the popular belief that the devil avoids holy edifices and vanishes at the sound of a credo or paternoster is long since exploded. Indeed, modern skepticism asserts that he is not averse to these orthodox discourses, which particularly bear reference to himself and, in the measure, recognize his power and importance. I am inclined to think, however, that his choice of resting place was a good deal influenced by its contiguity to a populous thoroughfare. When he was comfortably seated, he began pulling out the joints a small rod, which he held in his hand, and which presently proved to be an extraordinary fishing pole, with a telescopic adjustment that permitted its protraction to a marvelous extent. Affixing a line thereto, he selected a fly of particular pattern from a small box which he carried with him, and, making a skilful cast, threw his line into the very centre of that living stream, which ebbed and flowed through Montgomery Street. Either the people were very virtuous that evening, or the bait was not a taking one. In vain the devil whipped the stream at an eddy in front of the Occidental, or trolled his line into the shadows of the Cosmopolitan. 5 minutes passed without even a nibble. "Dear me," quoth the devil, "that's very singular one of my most popular flies, too. Why, they'd have risen by shoals in Broadway or Beacon Street for that. Well, here goes another." And fitting a new fly from his well-filled box, he gracefully recast his line. For a few moments there was the very prospect of sport. The line was continually bobbing, and the nibbles were distinct and gratifying. Once or twice the bait was apparently gorged and carried off in the upper stories of the hotels to be digested at leisure. At such times, the professional manner in which the devil played out his line would have thrilled the heart of Isaac Walton, but his efforts were unsuccessful. The bait was invariably carried off without hooking the victim, and the devil finally lost his temper. "I've heard of these San Franciscans before," he muttered. "Wait till I get a hold of one. That's all," he added malevolently, as he rebaited his hook. A sharp tug and a wriggle foiled his next trial, and finally, with considerable effort, he landed a portly 200-pound broker upon the church roof. As the victim lay there gasping, it was evident that the devil was in no hurry to remove the hook from his gills, nor did he exhibit in delicate operation that courtesy of manner and graceful manipulation which usually distinguished him. "Come," he said gruffly, as he grasped the broker by the waistband, "quit that whining and grunting. Don't flatter yourself with you're just a prize. I was certain to have you. It was only a question of time." "It is not that, my lord, which troubles me," whined the unfortunate wretch as he painfully wriggled his head, "but that I should have been fooled by such a paltry bait. What will they say of me down there, to have let bigger things go by, and to be taken in by this cheap trick?" he added as he groaned and glanced at the fly which the devil was carefully rearranging. "Is what, pardon me, my lord, is what gets me?" "Yes," said the devil philosophically. "I never caught anybody yet who didn't say that. But tell me, ain't you getting somewhat fastidious down there?" "Here is one of my most popular flies, the greenback," he continued, exhibiting an emerald-looking insect which he drew from his box. "This, so generally considered excellent in the election season, has not even been nibbled at. Perhaps your sagacity, which, in spite of this unfortunate contempt, no one can doubt," added the devil with a graceful return of his usual courtesy, "may explain the reason, or suggest a substitute." The broker glanced at the contents of the box with supercilious smile. "Too old-fashioned, my lord. Long ago played out. Yet," he added with a gleam of interest, "for a consideration I might offer something that would make it a taking substitute for these trifles. Give me," he continued in a brisk, businesslike way, "a slight percentage and a bonus down, and I'm your man." "Name your terms," said the devil earnestly. "My liberty and a percentage on all you take, and the thing's done." The devil caressed his tail thoughtfully for a few moments. He was certain of the broker anyway, and the risk was slight. "Done," he said. "Stay a moment," said the artful broker. "There are certain contingencies. Give me your fishing rod and let me apply the bait myself. It requires a skillful hand, my lord. Even your well-known experience might fail. Leave me alone for half an hour, and if you have reason to complain of my success, I will forfeit my deposit, I mean my liberty." The devil, assessed to his request, bowed and withdrew, alighting gracefully in Montgomery Street. He dropped into Mead and Co.'s clothing store, where, having completely equipped himself a la mode, he sailed forth, intent on his personal enjoyment, determining to sink his professional character. He mingled with the current human life and enjoyed, with that immense capacity for excitement peculiar to this nature, the whirl, the bustle, and feverishness of the people, as a purely aesthetic gratification, unallowed by the cares of business. What he did that evening does not belong to our story. We return now to the broker, whom we left on the roof. When he made sure that the devil had retired, he carefully drew from his pocketbook a slip of paper and affixed to it on the hook. The line had scarcely reached the current before he felt a bite. The hook was swallowed. To bring up his victim rapidly, disengage him from the hook, and reset the line was the work of a moment. Another bite, and the same result. Another, and another. In a very few minutes, the roof was covered with his panting spoil. The broker could himself distinguish that many of them were personal friends, nay, some of them were familiar frequenters of the building on which they were now miserably stranded. That the broker felt a certain satisfaction in being instrumental in thus misleading his fellow brokers, no one acquainted with human nature will for a moment doubt. But a stronger pull on his line caused him to put forth all his strength and skill. The magic pole bent like a coach whip. The broker held firm, assisted by the battlements of the church. Again and again it was almost wrested from his hand, and again he slowly reeled it in portion of the tightening line. At last, with one mighty effort, he lifted to the level of the roof a struggling object. A howl like pandemonium rang through the air as the broker successfully landed at his feet. The devil himself. The two glared fiercely at each other. The broker, perhaps mindful of his former treatment, evidenced no haste to remove the hook from his antagonist's jaw. When it was finally accomplished, he asked quietly if the devil was satisfied. The gentleman seemed absorbed in the contemplation of the bait which he had just taken from his mouth. "I am," he said finally, "and forgive you. But what do you call this?" "Bend low," replied the broker, as he buttoned up his coat, ready to depart. The devil inclined his ear. "I call it wildcat." The devil's age. There were a gentleman and a lady who were very poor. This man used to sit sadly at the crossroads. There came to him a gentleman who asked, "Why are you sad?" "Because I have not wherewith to live," the gentleman said. "I will give you as much money as you like, if at such and such time you will tell the age of the devil." Our man went off happy. He led a merry life with his wife, for they wanted for nothing. They lived at a great rate. But time went on, and the time was approaching. This man recollected that he had not busied himself at all about the devil's age. He became pensive. His wife asked him what the matter was with him. Why was he then not happy? They wanted for nothing. Why was he so sad? He told her how it was that he got rich and what compact he had made with the gentleman. His wife said to him, "If you have nothing but that, it is nothing at all. Get into a barrel of honey, and when you come out of it, get into another barrel of feathers, and, dressed like that, go to the crossroads and wait for the devil there. You will put yourself on all fours, and walk backward and forward, and go between his legs, and walk all around him." The man did as his wife told him. The devil came and drew back when he saw him, and our man went up quite close to the devil. The devil, being frightened, said to him, "I am 7,777 years old, and I have never seen an animal like that, and such a frightful one." Our man had heard enough. He went home at full speed and told his wife that they would want for nothing, that he had done as she had told him, just as if she had been a witch, and that he was no longer afraid of the devil. They lived rich and happily, and if they lived well, they died too. Thus I refute Bealsey. Bealsey. "There goes the tea bell," said Mrs. Carter. "I hope Simon hears it." They looked out from the window of the drawing-room. The long garden, agreeably neglected, ended in a waste plot. Here a little summer house was passing close by a beauty on its way to complete decay. This was Simon's retreat. It was almost completely screened by the tangled branches of the apple tree and the pear tree, planted too close together. And they always are in suburban gardens. They caught a glimpse of him now and then, as he suttered up and down, mouthing and gesticulating, performing all the solemn mumbo-jumbo of small boys who spend long afternoons at the forgotten ends of long gardens. "There he is, bless him," said Betty. "Playing his game," said Mrs. Carter. "He won't play with the other children any more, and if I go down there, that temper, and he comes in tired out." "He doesn't have his sleep in the afternoons?" asked Betty. "You know what Big Simon's ideas are," said Mrs. Carter. "Let him choose for himself. He says that's what he chooses, and he comes in as white as a sheet." Look, he's heard the bell, said Betty. The expression was justified, though the bell had ceased ringing a full minute ago. Small Simon stopped in his parade exactly as if it were its tinny dingle had at that moment reached his ear. They watched him perform ritual sweeps and scratchings with his little stick and come lagging over the hot and flaggy grass toward the house. Mrs. Carter led the way down to the playroom or the garden room, which was also the tea room for hot days. It had been the huge scullery of the tall Georgian house. Now the walls were cream-washed. There was a coarse blue net in the windows, canvas-covered armchairs on the stone floor, and a reproduction of Van Gogh's sunflowers over the mantelpiece. Small Simon came drifting in and accorded Betty a perfunctory greeting. His face was an almost perfect triangle, pointed at the chin, and he was paler than he should have been. "The little elf child," cried Betty. Simon looked at her. "No," he said. At that moment the door opened, and Mr. Carter came in, rubbing his hands. He was a dentist, and washed them before and after everything he did. "You," said his wife, "home already?" "Not unwelcome, I hope," said Mr. Carter, nodding to Betty. "Two people cancelled their appointments. I decided to come home, I said. I hope I'm not unwelcome." "Silly," said his wife. "Of course you're not." "Small Simon seems doubtful," continued Mr. Carter. "Small Simon, are you sorry to see me at tea with you?" "No, Daddy." "No what?" "No, Big Simon." "That's right, Big Simon and Small Simon. That's what sounds more like friends, doesn't it? At one time, little boys had to call their father Sir, if they forgot. A good spanking. On the bottom, a Small Simon?" "On the bottom," said Mr. Carter, washing his hands once more with his invisible soap and water. The little boy turned crimson with shame or rage. "But now, you see," said Betty, to help, "you can call your father whatever you like." "And what," asked Mr. Carter, "has Small Simon been doing this afternoon, while Big Simon has been at work?" "Nothing," muttered his son. "Then you have been bored," said Mr. Carter. "Learn from experience, Small Simon. Tomorrow do something amusing, and you will not be bored. I want him to learn from experience, Betty. This is my way, the new way." "I have learned," said the boy, speaking like an old, tired man, as little boys so often do. "It would hardly seem so," said Mr. Carter. "If you sit on your behind all afternoon doing nothing. Had my father caught me doing nothing, I should not sat very comfortably." "He played," said Mrs. Carter. "A bit," said the boy, shifting on his chair. "Too much," said Mrs. Carter. "He comes in all nervy and dazed. He ought to have his rest." "He is 6," said her husband. "He is a reasonable being. He must choose for himself. But what game is this, Small Simon, that is worth getting nervy and dazed over? There are very few games as good as all that." "It's nothing," said the boy. "Oh, come," said his father. "We're friends, are we not? You can tell me. I was a Small Simon once, just like you, and played the same games you play. Of course there were no airplanes in those days. With whom do you play this fine game? Come on, we must all answer civil questions, or the world would never go round. With whom do you play?" "Mr. Bealsey," said the boy, unable to resist. "Mr. Bealsey," said his father, raising his eyebrows inquiringly at his wife. "It's a game he makes up," said his wife. "Not makes up," cried the boy. "Fool!" "That is telling stories," said his mother, "and rude as well. We had better talk of something different." "No wonder he is rude," said Mr. Carter. "If you say he tells lies, and then insist on changing the subject. He tells you his fantasies, you implant a guilt feeling. What can you expect? A defense mechanism. Then you get a real lie." "Like in these three," said Betty, "only different, of course. She was an unblushing little liar." "I would have made her blush," said Mr. Carter, "in the proper part of anatomy. But Small Simon is in the fantasy stage. Are you not, Small Simon?" You just make things up. No, I don't, said the boy. You do, said his father, and because you do, it is not too late to reason with you. There is no harm in fantasy, old chap. There is no harm a bit in make believe, only you have to know the difference between daydreams and real things. Your brain will never grow. It will never be the brain of Big Simon. So come on. Let us hear about Mr. Bealsey of yours. Come on, what's he like? He isn't like anything, said the boy. Like nothing on earth, said the father. That's terrible, fellow. I'm not frightened of him, said the child, smiling. Not a bit. I should hope not, said his father. If you were, you would not be frightening yourself. I am always telling people, older people than you are, that they are just frightening themselves. Is he a funny man? Is he a giant? Sometimes he is, said the little boy. Sometimes one thing, sometimes another, said his father. Sounds pretty vague. Why can't you tell us just what he's like? I love him, said the small boy. He loves me. That's a pretty big word, said Mr. Carter. That might better be kept for real things like Big Simon and Small Simon. He is real, said the boy passionately. He's not a fool. He's real. Listen, said his father. When you go down the garden, there's nobody there, is there? No, said the boy. Then you think of him inside your head, and he comes. No, said the small Simon. I have to do something with my stick. That doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Small Simon, you are being obstinate, said Mr. Carter. I am trying to explain something to you. I have been longer in the world than you have, so naturally I am older and wiser. I am explaining that Mr. Bealsey is a fantasy of yours. Do you hear? Do you understand? Yes, Daddy. He is a game. He's let's pretend. The little boy looked down at his plate, smiling resignedly. I hope you are listening to me, said his father. All you have to do is to say, I have been playing a game of let's pretend with someone I make up called Mr. Bealsey. Then no one will say you tell lies, and you will know the difference between dreams and reality. Mr. Bealsey is a daydream. The little boy still stared at his plate. He is sometimes there and sometimes not there, pursued Mr. Oh, he is sometimes there and sometimes not there, pursued Mr. Carter. Sometimes he's like one thing, sometimes like another. You can't really see him, not as you see me. I am real. You can't touch him. You can touch me. I can touch you, said Mr. Carter, as he stretched out his big white dentist hands and took the little son by the shoulder. He stopped speaking for a moment and tightened his hand. The little boy sank his head still lower. Now you will know the difference, said Mr. Carter, between pretend and a real thing. You and I are one thing, he is another. Which is pretend? Come on, answer me. Which one is pretend? Big Simon and Small Simon, said the little boy. Don't, cried Betty, and at once put her hand over the mouth, for why should a visitor cry, don't, when her father is explaining things in scientific and a modern way? Well, my boy, said Mr. Carter, I have said you must be allowed to learn from your experience. Go upstairs, right up to your room. You shall learn whether it is better to reason or to be perverse and obstinate. Go up, I shall follow you. You're not going to beat the child, cried Mrs. Carter. No, said the little boy. Mr. Bealsey won't let him. Go on up with you, shouted his father. Small Simon stopped at the door. He said he wouldn't let anyone hurt me, he whimpered. He said he'd come like a lion with wings on and eat them up. You will learn how real he is, shouted his father after him. If you can't learn it at one end, you shall learn it from the other. I'll have your breeches down. I shall finish my cup of tea first, however, he said to the two women. Neither of them spoke. Mr. Carter finished his tea and unhurriedly left the room, washing his hands with his invisible soap and water. Mr. Carter said nothing. Betty could think of nothing to say. She wanted to be talking. She was afraid of what they might hear. Suddenly it came. It seemed to tear the air apart. Good God, she cried. What was that? He's hurt him. She sprang out of her chair, and silly eyes flashing behind her glasses. "I'm going up there," she cried, trembling. "Yes, let's go up," said Mrs. Carter. "Let's go up. This was not small Simon." It was on the second floor landing that they found the shoe with a man's foot still in it, like the last morsel of a mouse, which sometimes fall from the jaws of a hasty cat. How lovely. That story I rather enjoyed. Next time, my dear fiends, next time someone tells you they see something, perhaps you ought believe them. With that, my darlings, we'll allow the clock to strike 11, and then hickory dickory dock, this mouse. No, there's no rhyme for that one. This mouse must go out the clock, go out, run out the clock. If you are enjoying this, I want you to go over and like all of the comments, the shares. Thank you for all of those who have donated to my, what is it? It's the gentleman's house. Anyway, it's in the link is in the profile. All right, my beauties. Until next time, make certain to join me at the Movie Witches Coven on Wednesday. Scared and Alone will be making a new comeback soon, and I have a few other things up my sleeve. So, with that, my beauties, I bid you a most pleasant night's rest. Till next time, good night.